Hello and welcome to the best of high school chess. We're here with HSEL Nationals tournament here, Group B upper bracket finals in chess. Some of the best high school chess players in the HSEL are battling it out here for a spot in the grand finals, and they are already underway. My name is K-Wing, here with Dara. Dara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about a little bit of chess. We have an exciting match coming on soon ahead of us. And here's the thing, they are already midway into the match, so we're going to be jumping in, I believe, already halfway into game one. We're going to be seeing VibrantBroccoli going up against the Mad Irish. If I'm not mistaken, historically speaking, between these two players, VibrantBroccoli took the first set. I think that was back at Spring Majors. But now here they are at HSEL, and I'm excited to get going.
Yeah, they are currently 1-0, 3-1 for Vibrant Broccoli in that playoffs of the spring series in that semifinals. Now you have the Mad Irish coming in looking for maybe a bit of revenge, maybe a bit of turn of the tables, making this even, because a lot has changed since those spring playoffs, and now we are looking to jump right in and see just what these players are cooking up.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the position. Oh, buddy, they seem to be fairly well into the middle of the game, 8 minutes apiece. We just have to kind of we gotta basically pick it up from basically where you are as well. So just gotta take a second to look at everything that we have going on in front of us.
Yeah, already you can see that Vibrant Broccoli does have pretty solid control of the center with that e4 pawn, but that knight sitting on e5 for Callahan is pretty terrifying there. It is just covering the entire center of the board and really moving to take more center control away is Callahan with that bishop e6 move. And really at this point you're looking for a trade of the bishops coming in from Callahan, or just to put that pressure onto Vibrant Broccoli, now castling, keeping that king out of the center, because there is that threat of opening up that center and just having your king caught with their pants down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So just, backing off a little tiny bit, Black has excellent control over the board at the moment, right? You have the knight that we talked about, you have the bishop as well. You have a lot of really open files. And they're continuing to be aggressive. White gave up like a little bit of tempo via castling and is now looking to maybe force a trade here. Because this would be such a good position, I feel like, for the Mad Irish's bishop. If White were to take with bishop, then you'd be able to come in with your own bishop and then actually trade that rook away. That would have been huge. Vibrant Broccoli played that really well, just did not go for it at all, just recognizing that position super well, and is now actually moving the king out of the way. Interesting.
Yeah, really just cannot have that king on a fairly dangerous diagonal there with that white bishop and that pin, which could which could have been a problem if that king remained there. Now
Mhm.
moving forward, you're looking for Vibrant Broccoli to start to assert themselves into the center and start to put pressure on this buildup currently that that Callahan has started to form up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Putting your rook there at e1, just being able to back up the pawn at e4 a little bit. Right now, you're starting to control center a little bit more. You can start pushing up a little tiny bit. And you're also getting out of those diagonal files. We saw how the Mad Irish's white bishop just like kind of like threatening a little bit. So just being able to move yourself to a black tile, I feel like will be pretty nice here. But we're actually going to be seeing the Mad Irish Callahan go for pawn to a5. What could they be looking for with that?
You're really looking at a bishop that is trapped there. Look at the bishop on b3. It is
It is
nowhere that
sandwiched.
it can go. It is completely flattened.
Oh
And
yeah.
if Vibrant Broccoli had not played that A4, there would have been a lot of pressure that would have come in on a potential B on a potential B5 play to really threaten the A4 and just trapping the bishop there. But it is avoided, but still just a little bit favored for black, and you can absolutely see why with the pressure that Callahan is putting on this A through D side of the board.
Yeah, this looks like really uncomfortable, right? If I'm vibrant broccoli, like my biggest thing at the moment is, hey, how do I actually open up the left side of my board? We saw the rook move to A2, specifically to protect the pawn at B2, make sure that the knight can't really do anything. But I don't know, maybe just also trying to set themselves up for something later. Now that's going to be Callahan moving the pawn to G5, and wow, they're picking up the pace. Look how aggressive Callahan is playing.
Mm-hmm. And I really do like this. It's a bit of a almost a risky play with the G5 pawn push, because if that white bishop gets out, it can make some problems for this king on H7. But I mean, look at that. We talked about it. That white bishop on B3 can do nothing. It is boxed in, it is sealed in. Nothing can move it, and it can be moved by nothing at this point. And just the space getting taken by Callahan, you have to respect it
Oh yeah.
for Vibrant Broccoli, because they are starting to struggle, and there's the exchange now coming in of the bishops, potentially even a exchange of the white square bishops as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say that white bishop for vibrant broccoli not really doing a lot. Right, just kind of like protecting a couple of pawns. It's been kind of stuck on that like left side of the board for a good amount of time. So if you can get rid of that white bishop from the Mad Irish, if that is like the decision that is being made, suddenly you're making them let go of a lot of control. But instead, we're actually going to be seeing the queen go to C2 instead. I'm interested why. Maybe start to protect the two. Like go a little bit more.
That's definitely a possibility, but it is also there is a little bit of a threat of a discovery on that king, who is now looking a lot less safe
Mhm.
on the H6 square, as this white bishop is starting to get a bit more free. And
Oh, that's the play. That's
that
huge. That it's all about that pawn,
mhm,
right? It's the pawn at f2. It's been pinned there for so long. Now you have to start thinking, how can I alleviate any kind of pressure here? Putting up your knight there, stopping the queen from controlling the black diagonal. They're super, super smart. But there is very clearly a game plan that is being established. There is a potential win condition for the Mad Irish at this
exactly
point,
that
and they
queen
are just,
list.
oh yeah, they're just hammering in now.
Yeah, and the pressure there. All of Vibrant Broccoli's pieces are on that left side of the board. They just got completely smashed in there. And that is the only real move that you can get now
Oh
for the
yeah.
Vibrant Broccoli, is just bringing that knight over. And it's one of the few pieces that you could get over in time. It was still sitting in the center. And that is a huge gain there. And
You
there
had to go.
comes the
You have to pressure
exchange.
H2. You had to pressure
You
H2 to
had
make
to.
sure that the checkmate couldn't come out. And now that is a rook that is ready to move. It is ready to be activated in any moment. Just putting down the pressure there. This can be so 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 huge. But we're starting to see Vibrant Broccoli get a little bit aggressive for themselves as well. Completely getting into Mad Irish's backline, starting to maybe take care of a couple of pawns.
Yeah, and at this point, it has to be done at this point for Vibrant Broccoli. This is the way that you can get some pressure your off your king side, is you just need to try and draw some attention of all these pieces that are really ready to start tumbling into place.
Oh yeah. Okay, so now we're seeing the rook pressure down the g file. Probably the next play is just going to be, all right, I need to kind of get my king out of this position, right? Because you're just a couple of moves away from checkmate. You can't really play too much around with your knight. Maybe trying to bait something here, right? But if I'm Vibrant Broccoli, I'm not moving that knight. I just kind of have to get my queen out of the way a little bit.
Yeah, there comes the exchange taking away, and that's a really unfortunate situation for Callahan. That knight was, like you said, it was all that was there, and really, what are you going to bring over in time? You can bring over the queen, you can
Oh,
try to bring over the rook, but these two rooks that Callahan has are just scary as anything, controlling so much. And Vibrant Broccoli, their rook is shoved over in A2, controlling, A3, A1, B2, covering a whole 3 squares. And Callahan's rook is just slamming the entire G file with pressure and just making so much noise that you have to respond to it. It is commanding much so much power
yeah.
that really it's what this space allows you to do. It allows your pieces to control more of the board, to be more active, and Callahan is going to work right now.
Honestly, I feel like a play right now for Callahan might be to take that rook that is nestled very nicely in e5 and actually move it down to g5. Because if you could have like
Mm,
two rooks pressuring that same kind of a pawn, you can try to trade away the rook, and then you'll have a checkmate setup. Assuming that white takes, of course.
there
But
you
instead, yeah,
go.
just going through the positional. Wow.
Yeah, and there now you've just completely blown them out of the water. There's not much that they can do at this point. There's
That should be
so
mate.
much of an advantage. It's not guaranteed just yet, but it is not looking good for Vibrant Broccoli because, with just how much pressure is being put on, and with a really incredible sacrifice, this king is just in the middle of no man's land, has a queen and a rook just walking him down the side of the board. There's the queen exchange, and ooh, Callahan is dominating so far.
That was the queen exchange, but Callahan did like end up losing one of the rooks, so now they basically only have queens and pawns to play with. So I guess like the game plan at this point would be to try and promote one of your pieces to try and get them there as fast as possible. And it is up to Vibrant Broccoli to stop that from happening. And that is such a powerful position because at the very worst, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get a pawn out of that, and at best you're going to get a check. You're going to get a little bit more tempo, and then you're going to be able to push up more with any of your available pawns.
Yeah, and crucially, it's also just this queen is incredibly scary as to the spaces that it's controlling, because at this point, when you're threatening the push to, pushing down this F pawn, king can't get over there, and you are very easily starting to threaten.
Oh yeah.
Uh, you were threatening there a pretty easy promote into gaining the rook, but now with a pretty solid move to, the rook a1 move did abate that threat, but now there's some really scary things that Callahan could be doing there, and I think they have found it out.
Yeah, I am curious why the play might not have been to put the queen at e2 instead. It feels like that would have been a little bit more likely to result in winning a rook. But now that pawn wants to get promoted so bad, just going down all the way. Now this is like so tense. Just a couple of misplays on like Callahan's end, and that can result in all of these pawns that have been pushed up so far. All of a sudden, the chance to promote being like completely like snatched away, right? So backing up there a little bit to protect, because that is going to be a beautifully revealed check, and that is going to stop Vibrant Broccoli from being able to take that promoted pawn away. You're gonna have to respond with to the check. I don't actually know if Vibrant Broccoli has any moves that are good left at all.
Yeah, and there you go. Has to go king there. Has to just back away, and there's the win of the rook, and just devouring all of the pawns. There's some shenanigans here with
Ooh.
Callahan, but it's just not enough. The threat is there. It's mate in four guaranteed. Well, it's mate in four forced, and we'll just have to see if they can spot it out. Just trying to play around, trying to find that last little moment, and there goes the rook, and it's all over
Yep.
for Broccoli. It's Callahan by a country mile.
Yeah, that was actually very well played from like Callahan at the end. Honestly, like I wasn't like the most confident about like that Queen Rook trade because I thought, maybe something would happen here, but it just like so happened that Callahan's pawn structure was just that far up. It was just so advanced, and they're just getting into the next game already, trading out those pawns at center. Interesting. I feel like typically White wants to like preserve their pawns at that point, but they seem to be very comfortable with this opening.
That they do, and at this point, you're looking for Broccoli now on the black pieces to start to look for some potentially early opening tricks or
Mhm.
traps, and start to try and even up this scoreline to get us into a better position at this point. Going with that e4 c5 line, a
Oh yeah.
very messy center right now.
Yeah, a whole lot of tension on the board. As soon as there's like one exchange, all hell's gonna break loose. We're gonna be seeing trades left and right. So we're just seeing, Callahan right now just take a second to be able to slow things down, take a second to think about the next move at this point. That knight is pushed up. That thing has extended, and honestly, none of Callahan's pawn structure is ready to be able to counter that. You have to put your knight there, you have to retreat a little bit, because the number one goal is to get rid of that knight. You got rid of it, all of a sudden that center control that VibrantBroccoli was putting forth has, somewhat dissipated. You exchange a couple of knights. Happens to the best of us.
That it does, but it's just again this space control that you see Callahan being able to take early with some good tactics. The knight is already incredibly threatening. This bishop has so much control, and Broccoli has
Ooh.
to take that knight over to the edge just to try and get that bishop away, and really trying to break up this battery
Yeah,
of the
typically speaking,
bishop on f4 and queen on d2. It's scary already.
like that's like fairly unconventional, right? You don't want to move like your knights to the edge of the board like that. You restrict a lot of mobility. In this case, like the goal is like, hey, I can kind of sandwich this bishop. I can force you to back off a little tiny bit, but we're seeing Callahan just progress as normal. Totally okay with potentially losing that bishop. Happy to go ahead and eat that knight with a pawn in case that does happen. Now they're going to be pushing up with their pawn a little bit more as well, going up to d4, maybe trying to put a little bit of pressure onto c5, and just potentially giving the queen another means of maneuvering around. If you can put your queen up to d3, suddenly you have like that diagonal white file that you can move down.
Very true. And now is with that exchange, Callahan's position is a little bit more precarious with that pawn gone and with those doubled up pawns, but potentially looking for looking to keep that bishop locked in place there. It does have some good control of diagonals, especially just this h1 to a8 diagonal, the pressure it puts there on the center as well. It's very scary, and that's how you
That would be
see
huge.
that's
Yeah,
why
you
you
should.
see the sort of fianchetto bishops going a lot, is because it just has so much potential, especially when you open up the center. It can control a lot from a relatively very safe position and keep your king very, very safe. It looks like
Yeah,
we've been
for sure.
disconnected, so we're gonna
Oh no.
hop back into it as soon as we can.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, I love the fact that, this bishop right now for Callahan, this can be huge, right? Maybe just like taking a second to be able to think about the game. But going in with the bishop, taking that pawn on d5, at the very worst, you can get a pawn for your troubles. At best, I mean, you have now successfully pinned that pawn, right? That's protecting the king at f7. So that's putting in a lot of pressure really, really quickly, really early on into the game, and just sort of forcing Vibrant Broccoli back a little bit. We did see a disconnect. Don't really know what that necessarily implies at the moment. So, you know, I think that's a streamer that actually has to refresh the page.
Yeah, I believe so too at this point. I mean, if looking at the side, it is slightly favored for white. There is a lot of really good center control. The minor pieces that Callahan has and the pressure that they're using them to exert, I'm really happy with it currently. And there's a lot of potential on what could come on that f7 square when the attack comes in for Callahan. That could be a potential breaking point. That could be the weakest link in this chain that causes the entire spool to fall apart.
Oh yeah, but I guess only time will tell. We just got to be able to get back into the swing of the match, so that we can tell like what's up and see what's happening. Um, yeah, it's all really gonna depend on this like f7 pawn that you mentioned. It's really gonna depend on this like d5 square. And oh, oh, okay.
Well, yeah, so we do have a bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to be sitting here for a second. But again, already we have seen just how strong the Mad Irish is and how scary that he can be with some really good positioning and some really scary attacks. And now we see again some more pressure, a really scary battery, that rook and queen bearing down on the D file.
Yeah, well,
And
we like missed a
again,
couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing, Vibrant Broccoli's queen all the way down there on h4. Now just like really hammering in onto that right side of the board. We did see the bishop play that we were talking about, the bishop 2d5. We see that there was a block attempt to stop that pawn from being pinned in any shape or form, because Vibrant Broccoli blocked with the white bishop. And now this is a little bit more interesting. Slowly, a win condition is starting to develop for Vibrant Broccoli here. It's all going to depend on how you pressure and manipulate that the H pawn, the H2.
that is that's definitely what you want to see here. You also have a potential threat on that G file where Callahan's king is fairly exposed when you're looking at potentially bringing in one of the bishops, bringing in a rook. Broccoli does have the opportunity here to start to get an attack going, and yeah, that does force a bit of that. That does force
Mm.
the battery to be broken on the D file, but that queen can still hop right back on that, and that rook is still mighty scary when you're talking about open files.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right now, the biggest thing that I'm seeing for Vibrant Broccoli, I'm looking at that rook that's at A8 and moving that over to D8, putting a little bit of pressure onto the white bishop like that. You honestly start to open up Vibrant Broccoli's own white bishop that is sitting at e6, right? If you can force that bishop out of there and you can control like that diagonal all the way down, we're actually going to see the play immediately. Going in with the rook now and going in with one of their own as well. All of a sudden, this is like really turned up the tempo.
It absolutely has, and now just the pressure coming in on this rook. It's really, really interesting to see whether or not we're going to see that exchange. But if we do see that exchange, there's a lot of threats there on the back rank of Vibrant Broccoli and potentially to get a passed pawn.
Oh, for sure. Okay, but suddenly this is basically like forcing uh Vibrant Broccoli to make a decision to either you back up with the rook and you start to lose a little bit of like control. You can't like move around as much. Maybe you try to go for like a trade, but then you sacrifice Callahan actually being able to advance with that pawn even further, and then the queen is going to have an open file to go down in. I feel like backing up with the rook might be a really good move at this point. Maybe protecting the rook with your other rook that hasn't moved yet at all. But instead, no, gonna
Ooh,
go for the trade. That is a bold move.
it really is a bold move, and that pawn is going to be very, very scary, especially with potential threats of something like queen, maybe getting the queen in a pretty scary position, and very big. A lot of threats could come in off of that pawn on d6 because it's pretty much only the rook that is
Oh yeah.
able to attack it and able to put a stop to it at this point.
Honestly, putting your queen up to e7 if you're Callahan might be a really bold move. Because if you force like the queen trade, then all of a sudden your pawn is going to be in like an excellent position. But then it might actually, and then you can move your other rook, your other white rook that is sitting at f1. You can move that to e1. There's a lot of stuff that could potentially happen. That could be like really risky. So we're starting to approach the end game. A lot of pieces have been taken at this point. One or two misplays can easily result in like a game-ending sequence. So I'm curious to see how they'll play it out.
That is, it certainly can. And as we move forward, we do have a bit of a time disparity here with Callahan just under 4 minutes, with Vibrant Broccoli sitting pretty at over 5. So we're looking at almost a 2-minute time disparity here. Definitely not a problem for either of these players, you will say, but you might end up seeing potentially Callahan running into some issues there, and rook over to e8 immediately
That's
threatens
huge.
some scary stuff there with queen e8 check, rook takes mate. So there is an immediate threat that you have to deal with now. If you are Vibrant Broccoli, that you cannot ignore, and there is the
So
answer, just
smart.
having to push up, but you might give yourself some weakness there on those dark squares.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, hey, you have all this pressure on you. You already see like one or two potential checkmate lines. So this is all that this is doing is it is effectively giving you like a little escape option to get out of that position.
Ooh.
And now we're going to be seeing that queen go to e7. If queen takes, then you can swoop in with your rook. You can swoop in with your pawn. And all of a sudden, you are threatening with the chance to promote that pawn. So this is going to be really huge. I don't know about actually taking this with the rook, because if you do so, then well, then you're giving up that pawn, aren't you?
You are, but you do have the immediate chance of exchange with potentially there. You would have had if rook takes if rook takes d6, you had rook takes b7 to also just weaken the pawns on the queen side of the board. But now there's a lot going on here for both these players, and a little bit of potentially an advantage coming up for Vibrant Broccoli with with a little bit better pawn positioning. If the rooks
Oh
get
yeah.
exchanged off here and this pawn on d6 ends up getting dealt with, you might see some difficulty and an interesting play giving up that pawn and not really getting much for it, and a really scary play there from Vibrant Broccoli, just putting so much pressure on these queenside pawns, trying to eliminate them out. But even if the trade comes through, you're probably going to end up wanting Vibrant Broccoli's kingside pawns over Callahan's. And at this point, a bit of an advantage there going towards,
Ooh.
yeah, a bit of an advantage going in the way of Vibrant Broccoli, up an entire pawn, and with some scary threats here to potentially, with that passed pawn, they're going to be dealing with it with the rook, but that black king cannot
But that's
move
going to reveal
forward.
the check.
There's the
Oh.
discovery.
Yeah, but then you move up like that. But wait, isn't that going to allow Vibrant Broccoli to just go back in and take that? Oh, interesting.
That's the question. This rook on the side of this rook for Callahan is doing a lot of work, and it's very, very terrifying at this point, but I don't think you're going to get any more value out of the pawn. Almost got there to the end, and now time is starting to sweat down Callahan's neck, and that might have been a bit of a blunder there. Not
Oh
finding
no.
not finding that sort of position. There goes the pawn exchange coming in. Now looking to take out those king side pawns, still keeping it a solid advantage of a bit of pawn and a bit more, but like I said, those king side pawns for Vibrant Broccoli are a bit scary, and just having that outside control, you're going to get into uh, some really intricate endgames here with these pawns and rooks.
This is a fascinating game. This is really down to the wire. The entire board is clear. Of course, Vibrant Broccoli has a very slight pawn advantage, but they're just like on the same side of the board at this point. You just have to find any way to get to center. You have to find any way to be able to promote if you actually want to close this out, or maybe catch one of them on a blunder. And losing one of the rooks as well. That's going to be a pretty tough check here. And they're just going for it.
That they are, and now with just how much Callahan is locked down now, it's going to be very, very tough to get that king into the game. And the value that the king brings, especially in the end game, cannot be overstated. And just getting backed into a corner is Callahan's king, and the pressure that
Ooh.
is coming in. This is
You have to give up that
scary.
pawn. You have to give up that
You
pawn, maybe start threatening with your own, but that was such a good move, preventing the check on the F isle. And you're still pressuring that pawn. That is going to be a one pawn at this moment. You do have to take it with the rook, though, so that, of course, that's not going to be Callahan winning that rook. Instead, pressuring that rook a little bit more, pushing up with that, that's going to be a huge check. What's going to be the play here? Just backing off a little tiny bit. This is some intricate endgame stuff. This is very, like, I don't know. Anybody messes up here, and then that's going to be the set.
It absolutely is, and the pressure and the tactics that have been used here by Vibrant Broccoli is just amazing, and the amount of pawns that are putting so much force on this king side, overwhelming
Oh,
for
yeah.
Callahan. You just cannot. This wave is just going to sweep over your entire king side. This storm will not end. It'll end with potentially you losing your last pawn, and best hope of uh, getting out of this position. And we might be evening
Yeah.
up to 1-1. There you go. There's the rook gone. It's mate in 3 for Vibrant Broccoli, and it looks like it might just be it. There you almost. I think you had Rook A1 there, but wanted to do it a little bit
Yeah.
flashier. 2 pawns and the rook. 1-1 now for these players. Now coming in with the Pirk defense. Uh, Vibrant Broccoli now on the white, even up to 1-1 now, and same amount of maps as you had in the original Spring Series set when Vibrant Broccoli took it over Callahan. Now Callahan looking to take that lead back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we're in this next game now. They're just getting the opening sequences out of the way now that they've gotten their, like, sort of memorized opening sequence is done with, we're starting to approach the middle of the game. Vibrant Broccoli, super strong control of the center. I gotta say, Callahan is looking a little boxed in at this point. Look at all of those knights all the way back there. Gonna be sacrificing that pawn so that you can play up so aggressively with your bishop, forcing the king into the corner already so early into the game. This is going to set up a brutal fork. You put up that knight to f7. That is your biggest thing that you have to avoid. Well, excuse me, there is still a rook protecting the f file.
I mean, but even still, you take that. If you take the knight up there, rook takes and bishop takes is immediately going to follow, and you are up a minor piece for a rook this early on with how this is already just within the first 10 moves. This is a whole different Vibrant Broccoli from the one that we saw at the start of this series. The rust has
Oh
been
yeah.
shaken off, and Broccoli is not here to play anymore.
Yeah, no, not at
There's
all.
the
And you know
fork.
what? Still trying to set that one up, but hey, look at this still fairly advantageous position. Look at where that bishop is sitting. We are like, however many moves into this game. You have a bishop already sitting on like f7, just all the way out there. So right now, you gotta get rid of that thing. You have to get rid of it at all costs. You know what? You got rid of it. You stopped whatever Vibrant Broccoli was cooking up all the way on the other side of the board. But that could have gotten nasty super quick if you could like mobilize your queen. If you could mobilize one of your rooks, that would have been huge.
Oh, and it already is very, very nasty because you traded a knight, or sorry, you traded a bishop for a rook there. You definitely want to start playing
Oh yeah.
on these verticals, start using the advantage that you have gained with that little tactic, with that trick, and start pushing in and playing aggressive. And that is exactly what we're going to see with with a really scary bishop play there. That bishop is definitely threatening. Oh, it's threatening a lot of things, but one big threat it might be threatening there is potentially taking pushing to h6
Mm-hmm.
to try and draw out that bishop and take away that really valuable piece of protection from Callahan. But just already you have seen a very different side of Broccoli than we have before.
Oh yeah, for sure. Broccoli just is looking a lot better this time around, looking a little bit more aggressive, going for these super aggressive trades. And now you have that queen at center to worry about, right? So if I'm Vibrant Broccoli, of course, I have to get that bishop out of there. I'm going to back up a little tiny bit here. Not a lot of moves for that black bishop left. And now pushing up with that pawn as well. I'm interested what Callahan's thought process was behind that.
It's an interesting push, absolutely. And there is a pretty solid threat there of the battery coming in on that diagonal, but there's a really solid defense here from the pawns on the king side for Vibrant Broccoli. You might be worried about a little bit of weakness on the dark squares, but again, this dark squared bishop over on g7 is not going to be doing much of any pressure onto the king. There comes some pressure onto the queen, looking
Ooh,
to
you can't
potentially
even like move
trade.
that queen out of the way because the rook is still there as well. So, Callahan looking to like sort of like even up like that point differential that was established so early on when Vibrant Broccoli ended up taking one of their own rooks. Gonna be putting up a pawn of their own, making sure that no funny business can actually happen at that point in time. Callahan gonna be moving the queen all the way over to h5. This is an interesting play. Just, again, they're just fighting for that right side of the board at this point. Maybe trying to get something going here.
There you go. That was a really, really great game there from Vibrant Broccoli. I mean, a
Wow.
quick, going up to a quick lead and then putting so much pressure onto the center, really just taking file after file. And the it was just it was incredible to watch
So
their
aggressive, right?
20 yeah, incredibly aggressive 25 moves. And we're gonna be we have a quick break for our competitors, as now for Vibrant Broccoli, you do have match point.
Yeah. So currently up in the set 2-1. Historically speaking, Vibrant Broccoli is the one that did get the previous set between these two. In the beginning of the game, we didn't actually get to see Vibrant Broccoli too much. We did only, of course, jump in halfway. But we just saw something really aggressive. We saw a lot of trading up. We saw a lot of bishops that are just like, hey, we're a couple of moves into the game. I'm going to be all the way in your back line as well, completely boxing in Callahan. And I felt like Callahan had to play for him like a back foot, like immediately into that game, not really navigating that position super well, going down point wise, losing the rook so early on. Probably felt pretty bad if I were Callahan, right? Definitely had a lot less pieces to protect my king on the back line, and then you put your queen up there, that would have been made in a couple of moves. Vibrant Broccoli is looking super good, super aggressive, just putting Callahan in a lot of really uncomfortable positions that they seem to struggle to navigate that last game, especially.
Completely. And now you're looking at going forward a really difficult position for Callahan, but we have seen them take Broccoli to their limits, and they were in the lead at the start of this series, and they're going to have to pull out some big tricks going forward as we look to what could potentially be the last game in this series, and potentially it could be Callahan getting sent to the lower bracket.
Yeah, for sure. That last game went by like so quickly. I wish I had like the ability to actually go through the replay myself and figure out exactly like what the misplay was. But whatever Vibrant Broccoli was doing with the bishop, under no circumstances can that happen again. That was like immediately super super aggressive. Callahan playing through a back foot like super early on. So I am curious to see how this next game goes. We are just gonna be waiting a little bit for them to get back into the swing of things. Thank you for your patience again, as we do get that going.
Yeah, and there was a really like a very close game that was kind of just, had a bit of a mistake happen, and it looks like we are hopping right back in
Mm.
to what could be the last one, again coming in with the Sicilian with the quiet system, which is what we saw in, I believe, game two, as Queen coming out quickly, the center getting opened up, and we've seen Vibrant Broccoli go do very, very well in these open center games, and where a lot of long sight lines and really good tactics can come out. We've already seen some
So
incredible
that was
play, and I'm looking
interesting.
forward to it.
I feel like typically in that position, you see pawn move to g4 instead, just so that you could force like that bishop to back off a little bit. And now, because of the fact that didn't happen, that is no longer an option for Callahan, right? You can't put your pawn at g4 anymore because you have the white and the bishop on that square. The right side is looking boxed in a little tiny bit. But yeah, I guess you can go for this trade here. But no, that time just backing off with the bishop. Callahan gonna be popping in with the black bishop of their own, popping out that pawn as well to try and get a little bit of a foothold on center. And then also specifically open up their own black bishop. Vibrant Broccoli's black bishop is just ready to go at a moment's notice to jump on over to d6.
And already you're looking at some pretty scary moves here with that bishop on d6, putting a lot of pressure onto a potential weak square, some potential weak dark squares on the side of Callahan, and the space sort of creeping forward. It's pretty even right now, but there's some really I I just love Broccoli's use of bishops so far in this
Oh yeah.
entire setup, uh, with just how well that they've used them and how aggressive they have gotten with them.
Yeah, Broccoli has been really assertive with the bishops. And now you have both of them out. You have both of them ready to go and activated. Honestly, that bishop on Callahan's and that black bishop on f4 is looking a little bit vulnerable. You start pushing up with your pawns a little bit, and you're going to have to force it to reposition in one of three squares. There's not a lot of good places to go at that point. So it is going to be interesting how things develop from then on. That pawn that was pushed up to h7 was really smart because then all of a sudden that g5 that would have been the escape for that black bishop is now invalidated. You don't have a lot of places to go. Already, like Vibrant Broccoli is just boxing them in.
Yeah, just so. This is what we have seen happen for now 2 games in a row. Is Vibrant Broccoli doing incredibly well to take space and has really just started to make a lot of
Oh yeah.
threats towards the king side of Callahan.
Oh, absolutely. And such a good time to castle as well, right? You get that bishop trade, you get that one out of the way, and now you're successfully able to get both of those rooks out there and ready to go in a moment's notice. This is a fairly even position at this point, though. Nobody is up ahead in points. Going to be backing up a little bit, going to be trying to sort of force that pawn down the file, putting the knight out there instead to force white to do something with the queen. You have to get that thing out of there. But you know what? You can also just get rid of that knight instead. If you take that pawn and you vibe broccoli, you're going to see maybe a potential knight trade, which could be huge for Callahan because then your white rook will be activated. It will be in a really good place. So that's what I'm feeling is going to happen. Yep, that's one knight. Are we going to see the trade or are we going to see Vibrant Broccoli back off?
Yeah, we might have to see them back off because getting that rook into that center square could be a very scary proposition
Want to fight a rook at center? Like
for
to not do that
Vibrant.
if I'm Vibrant Broccoli, right? That would be
Yeah, it would
really
be a very
unpleasant.
scary proposition for Vibrant Broccoli. Yeah, there you go. There's the pretty solid attack, just forcing the king of Vibrant Broccoli away. A pretty scary move there, trading the queen for the 2 rooks in the back line, and there is some really scary potential there, especially with just how pinned down that king is right now. There is nowhere for him to move.
Yeah, I gotta say, Callahan is really up in position at this point. Right? Black does not have any looks left. We have one already all the way down on the 8 file as well. And we're starting to see, Vibrant Broccoli back off a little bit, starting to play a little bit more defensively. It is Callahan who is on the aggressor side at this point in time. That's going to be the rook trade, or the knight trade, excuse me. And now just pushing up a little tiny bit here, you have to back off. You don't want that queen to take that rook, and going in again, you have nothing protecting the e2 square at all. This is interesting.
It is interesting. I think at this point you of course have the threat of taking that a2 pawn, the pressure that the light square bishop puts on
Mhm.
the white squares. You have some really good potential here for Vibrant Broccoli to get some attacks going with
Mhm.
this queen and bishop combo. And I do like the push forward to try and keep this queen
Oh yeah.
a little bit boxed in and just not able to really start to get the ball rolling toward the king side, as that pawn push is interesting, trying to take more of that space on the queen side and push in. But I don't know that. Yeah, there you go. That bishop just smacking the queen in the back, just forcing her over to the side and just getting
Oh yeah.
trapped back there. Just the tempo and the space taking that this is achieving is great here for Callahan.
Yeah, I gotta say, Callahan is just playing so well. Everything is like really efficient, right? When you're seeing like something open up another move, you're seeing something else get protected as well. And now, of course, backing up with the king a little tiny bit. You don't want to nestle yourself in a way that the queen can continue her pressure. And I feel like the biggest issue for Vibrant Broccoli right now is that you have basically only your queen right now that is doing anything on the board. Callahan has been, really putting in a lot of pressure with both rooks and that bishop as well. Now going to be backing off a little tiny bit here. I'm interested what the idea was behind that.
Yeah, you're putting a little bit more defense onto that rook on e2, covering up some potential shenanigans that could happen with that red square bishop, and also just covering a fairly big hole in those defenses. Your king is very safe. Both these kings currently are somewhat safe. The rook push coming in, just putting more and more pressure on that king on h7, proving that maybe he isn't as safe as we once previously thought.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have, of course, the queen on the back line. Now you have two rooks to worry about. This is going to be mate next move, I believe. If you put that rook on over to h8. So you got to get out of it. You got to pull a fast one. You got to figure something out. And I don't really know what the move is, besides, of course, getting your bishop out of there so the king has another way of escaping that situation. Now, ooh, this is interesting. You're starting to really get aggressive there. But of course, that comes at the consequence of not only a pawn, but you're losing your rook in this position. I'm curious why Vibrant Broccoli didn't take.
I think at this point, VibrantBroccoli didn't take that rook because
Oh, the bishop, the white bishop, that would have been it. That's
that
right.
it would have that bishop would have put so much pressure on to would have actually mated the king because of where the rook is right now, and well, not mated actually. There's g6, but you still have a very disadvantageous position and still gaining that pawn, gaining two pawns that don't have a lot of pressure on them at this point as you look for endgame tricks, pushing pawns, and that positioning. These two pawns are going to be a very scary thing to deal with for Callahan, but a lot of advantage right now going towards them. They have the opportunity to take us to a fifth game and to potentially get themselves to match point.
Yeah, for sure. You just have to make sure that if you're Callahan, you're not mispositioning yourself, you're not setting yourself up for any two-way or three-way forks of any kind. You're backing off with the queen, with the king in that direction, excuse me, so that you don't get that pawn pinned against you in any shape or form. But now you still have that pawn pinned from the bishop that is sitting at d7. The problem I feel like is that Broccoli, for the last however many moves, hasn't had a lot of tools to play with, right? Never really exerting a lot of pressure onto the board from losing both of the rooks so early on.
Yeah, and now again getting chased into this corner, and a lot of really scary threats here for Callahan. Looking for just squeezing this king into the corner and flattening him, because not a lot of squares that he can move that are going to be very safe. And you can even see just how absolutely terrifying this is for Vibrant Broccoli, with how much pressure is getting put onto the
Yep.
king on this row. I do like the pawn push to try and take away some pressure, to try and
You got to promote.
just
You got to get
stop
something
anything.
else.
You gotta get you have to get something. You have to try and draw those two rooks and that bishop away from your king, because there is so much negative potential of getting mated just from the rooks that are there. This really
Mm.
terrifying battery. You look to get even squeezed out toward the center. The pawns are a terrifying threat, but they can be dealt with. You just have to make sure that Callahan can still deal with them. There is that rook h7 check, and that king is going to get squeezed in right toward the center.
Yeah. I
Terrifying.
see another check attempt, right? If you put your rook onto h5, you're going to force the king out of the way, and then you're going to be able to take Vibrant Broccoli's queen. Or alternatively not. You don't necessarily have to go through that, but that could have been so huge. That would have really probably totally solidified the game for Callahan, but it is going to go on a little bit longer. Now you're trying to completely eliminate that pawn from basically doing anything, right? You put your bishop all the way up there, but essentially, you've also blocked off the ability for one of your rooks to go and defend against the pawn that's about to promote. It is one move away from doing so. But then, of course, so is VibrantBroccoli from getting checkmated, right? You put that rook up to f5, and then, of course, you can do something with the queen there. Honestly, this feels kind of doable still. This feels fairly doable for VibrantBroccoli because of how much development went into pushing that pawn that's on a2.
Yeah, and the pawn on g6 is doing a lot of work, like preventing a lot of these what would be very, very terrifying moves. As there comes the exchange, huge trades there. The queen is gone and the rook is right there. It's going to
Oh,
have it's going to just barely be able to sit there, but there you go. The bishop, they can't do it. They cannot get
can't
the
get there in
promotion.
time.
And there is the resignation on black.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways that game could have gone, but honestly, Callahan just played that one really well. But now, of course, we are in game number 5, and already they are going into with the same exact opening that they've done several times before. And now maybe they'll be mixing things up a little tiny bit. We're going to be seeing the bishop go to g7. We're seeing VibrantBroccoli's own bishop go on over to c4 as well. Really strong control of the center right from the get-go. A lot of really good open files, and already in just a couple of moves setting themselves up for a kingside castle. Probably activate a rook. That last game, VibrantBroccoli kind of lived and died by the lack of rooks when they kind of needed it most, and Callahan was just like up in points so much early on into the game.
Yeah, and now as you look there, you have those two pawns in the center for VibrantBroccoli. This is it. This is for all the marbles here, Dara. Whoever wins this game moves on to grand finals of Group B, and whoever loses this game goes down to the lower bracket. It all comes down to this.
I'm curious what the play is here with moving the knight up like that, right? I guess you're just going to lose that knight, but then you're setting up with that pawn as well. That was a weird exchange. That was a really strange exchange. I'm curious why VibrantBroccoli didn't just like back off after taking that with their own knight. But oh no. Oh, this is interesting. Either you back off with your queen, or maybe you can go for like a very early game queen trade.
Yeah, that's what's
gonna
going
be
to
the queen trade.
happen. And a very scary bishop that just needed to. That c3 just had to be played. You could not live with a gigantic bishop just sitting in the center of everything on d4, threatening your f2 square, and just it would be potentially devastating. Now Callahan trying to break up that bishop pair, pushing in with the pawns, and
Yeah,
just
taking full
really,
advantage of that,
yeah,
right?
taking so much space, breaking up that bishop pair. That was pretty scary there for a second, but very quickly diffused by Callahan, taking a solid advantage, but still keeping that king relatively safe.
That black bishop from VibrantBroccoli right now is looking extremely weak. That was such an important play, though, because if you did not put that rook there, if you were Callahan, and then bishop took the pawn that was sitting at e5, and then, of course, he took with their own bishop, and then that would have resulted in VibrantBroccoli being able to go in there with a rook of their own, and then all of a sudden you would have had to deal with a rook that is sitting at the center of the board. You protect that pawn, and now all of a sudden VibrantBroccoli's black bishop is back to being weak and boxed in and kind of stuck on that right side of the board with not a lot of places to go. That is a brutal position to be in, and if I'm Callahan, I'm looking to advance that pawn that is sitting at f6, maybe, or f5, excuse me, or even pop in with that white bishop of their own. I really like Callahan's position right now.
It's incredibly advantageous, and there goes the exchange coming in. It's
They blocked
close,
off
and
with the bishop. They
They did
blocked off
block
with
off
their
with the
bishop, and
bishop.
now all of a sudden you have a rook to deal with at the center of the board. That was kind of brutal.
Yeah, and the exchange again coming in. It's fairly favored for Callahan, just replacing one bishop with the other. Oh,
This is
that
such an
could have
aggressive
been
game.
that could have
Yeah,
been very disastrous there for Callahan. It looked like there was potentially a big move that could have
yeah.
really gotten Vibrant Broccoli a very advantageous position, but we continue onward at a very at a fairly even position here. I know the side of the board says 2.7, but it is very much up in the air right now. That
Yeah.
bishop, though, on the side of Callahan, it is boxed in and it is not going much further than where it is right now.
And you really want to be careful about taking the bishop that's sitting at a2 because, of course, that is going to allow for a fairly free check. Of course, not going to be a mate quite yet, but it is still going to put you in a really brutal position, right? So it is Callahan's move at this point in time. I feel like a very powerful move in this position would be to take the pawn that is sitting at c3 so that you can put pressure on both the pawn and, more importantly, the bishop, right? So you really kind of want to get out of there. This is an awkward spot for VibrantBroccoli, I have to say.
It's a bit of an awkward spot for the both of them because I mean, there's the idea of bishop takes pawn, bishop takes bishop, and even if you have rook takes pawn on c3, there is a huge open file there uh, for that
Yeah.
rook on a1. But there is the exchange. Both these players not really trying to get that there. Plus, that bishop is pretty much just a little fancy hood ornament for the king side of Vibrant Broccoli. It's not doing much in the way of threatening any pieces right now. So,
Yeah, that bishop is sitting at a 9 to 5 desk job with nobody coming in through the doors. It has nothing to do, can't even be on its phone or anything because the manager will come in and get mad at it. So effectively just kind of sitting there doing nothing at the moment. And white has no incentive to move up that pawn either. In the moment that said, you know what, buddy, you put yourself into this mess, you can stay here as long as you want. So a little bit tricky for Callahan. You're effectively playing with one piece less, and white has one bishop more than you do for the moment being. Additionally, though, I will say Callahan's pawn structure is definitely a little bit more favorable at this point in time. You have just one more pawn to play with, and you have them pushed up more than Vibrant Broccoli has. This has been such a mutually aggressive game, both of them just trading up and up and up and up, and Callahan has a very slight point lead, but I do believe that we've been disconnected again.
yeah, and I'm very interested to see what happens when we get back into this game because again, a slight advantage here because that rook for Vibrant Broccoli isn't the most active versus the rook in for versus the rook of Callahan, which is doing a lot there. It is keeping its friend alive right now, and there's a lot of pressure. We haven't had any moves come in. There's the a5, some pressure coming in. There's that attempt to kick this rook out of the way, try and get some pressure,
Oh,
and
that's how you
that
bishop. You get rid of that bishop, and then all of a sudden he is free to go. You protect it with that pawn that is moving down a4. All of a sudden you're trying to get your king out of there so that you have a little tiny bit more mobility. But the game plan for Callahan is simple. You seeing that pawn at a4? The question is, how do you effectively push that up in time? The bishop and the pawn playing together is such a powerful place to be in, isn't it?
it absolutely is. It allows you to have that little bit of buffer as you look to push that pawn further and put more pressure and force Broccoli to devote more resources into trying to defend against it. And there's more and more pressure there. A bishop coming in, looking for a potential b4 push. Is Callahan just trying to rush this queen side? It's a bit more active and it's a bit more favorable for them, considering they have the
Interesting.
pawn advantage and now trying to get that king into the game.
Yeah, you got to get that king into the game at this point. You don't have a lot of other tools to play with. I am curious why the play wasn't actually to put your pawn to c4 as Callahan, right? Because that would have been able to allow you to continue to advance your pawn at a4. But now, of course, getting their own king into the game here, this is about to be a really tense game down to the last couple of pieces. Nobody wants to misplay here. Nobody wants to lose any of their essential pawns. And nobody, of course, wants to lose their respective rooks and bishops. So backing off a little tiny bit that way, that could be a really, really huge check, but you have to, of course, push up in this position. You cannot continue to advance this pawn because you would have effectively left your bishop unprotected at this point. Oh, interesting. Just going into the back line here with the rook. Maybe start to put some pressure on the right side of those pawns.
Yeah, and trying to make it so that the king side is of concern for Callahan, trying to get that pawn advantage over on the king side of the board and trying to overwhelm. But right now, you have to wonder if that rook could be maybe better served trying to defend against this overwhelmed queen side for Vibrant Broccoli, or whether or not this will be able to draw away the attention of Callahan enough to try and even out the king getting
Ooh,
pushed in.
that's
It's
huge.
looking interesting and just overwhelming with pressure. There comes the pawn trade, the rook coming in to check the king from behind.
But you're
And
going to
a
be
lot
losing a bishop
of
of your own at this point, unless you, of course, no, never mind. I'm sorry, I lied. A4 is still there. It's still going to be protecting the bishop. And I am just curious why. I feel like the play for Callahan was kind of to move the pawn to c4, though, because you could continue to protect, like, the bishop and still have a pawn that is moving to Vibrant's backline, right? But, just putting the rook out there yet again. Ooh, this is going to be huge. This is where I feel like Callahan can start getting a little bit of tempo. But you know what? Taking the bishop out of the equation, making sure the king is incapable of doing any plays at that point. And then also, what I think is really huge, you're protecting your king on that file. You're forcing rook to waste like a move taking that bishop. But yeah, really, really smart that Vibrant Broccoli didn't go for it. Just instead wanted to protect the one go so that no promotions can take place.
and with the pawns just marching forward, putting so much pressure on this king, he can't move at this point. Can't Has to be very, very careful to not get himself into a corner where he might just get squeezed right out of
Oh
it
yeah.
by these pawns. And a really threatening scenario here from Callahan, who might just be a few pawn pushes from punching his way into the grand finals of HSEL Nationals.
It's all about those pawns on the queen side that have been doing it for Callahan this entire game. The rook trade that Callahan did like 6, 7 moves ago was so smart, losing that rook in exchange for being able to free the bishop and actually get it back into the game. The bishop is looking like Callahan's MVP at this point in time. Now pushing up with a pawn of their own. Interesting play. I'm not really sure what the intentionality here is. Maybe trying to protect a square so that you can go for like a play with your rook as well. But honestly, this is looking so good for Callahan right now. Just a couple of moves away from being able to secure this for themselves.
The scary the scary part here is potentially if you on the side if Callahan pushes a2, as would be what they might want to do initially, you have the threat of the king just holding themselves up in a1 and really becoming a problem.
Oh yeah.
And it might not result in a win, but it could very well result in a draw if something should go wrong. But
That was a
Broccoli is
very
still,
important play from
yeah, definitely still
Broccoli
fighting out
or
there.
Callahan. Oh yeah, Callahan going through that play. Really important that you actually protect at least one of the squares, be it A3 or B3, because you can easily kind of like swoop in with your rook again. But yeah, they're both just taking their time here. We really got to also pay attention to the clock here. Callahan has significantly less time to play than Vibrant
Hmm.
Broccoli does. Vibrant Broccoli was just like super, super patient with it this entire time. And this is where it gets scary for Vibrant Broccoli. Bishop is starting to advance a little bit
Hmm.
by bit. You don't have the privilege of trying to pressure D anymore with that rook because of how close it is to the king as well. Callahan's positioning with the king and the bishops and pawns this game have been exceptional.
It absolutely has. And you have the protection of that queening space, and there it is. That's the promotion. Gonna march the other pawn forward, and the exchange of the rooks. Broccoli is going to try and play this out here very quickly with some very quick pre-moves. They do have a very strong advantage, and if Broccoli can play around this queen, it's going to be so tough, and it just might not be enough. There's the capture. The pawn just has to try and march
Yep,
forward. That
you're
king
done.
is trapped, and it's all over. We have our first grand finalist in chess in Group B. It's going to be SMHS Callahan taking it
Yep.
over Vibrant Broccoli, evening up the series, getting the revenge that we talked about so much with
Yeah,
the spring playoffs
you do
that
gotta input that
you
last
were just
move though.
hungry for. You have to.
Callahan
Come
is
on.
waiting on that G2. What's
Oh,
going
come
on here?
on.
Come on. Okay,
Give
here we
it
go.
to
Thank you.
us. Thank you.
Just had to like think about it enough times, maybe a little bit of BM there. Really good
Okay.
stuff to Callahan. Actually going to be bringing the total set count between the two of them 1-1. That was a really exciting last game. Every single one of those games, they were going down to the last handful of pieces. Nobody was decisively winning, but it all came down to that rook trade that Callahan went for on the queen side, right? By giving up one of your rooks in exchange for freeing up that bishop, the way that Callahan was just able to use the already developed and advanced pawns, already like up in pawn count, and then also pushed up a little bit more forward than Vibrant Broccoli was. It was all about that bishop. Callahan played that super, super beautifully. Yeah, that last exchange was just really well played.
Yeah, and now going forward, uh you have Vibrant Broccoli dropping down to the lower bracket finals, looking to face off against the winner of lower bracket round 1, potentially even facing off against the player that they beat in order to get to the upper bracket finals, Quirky Siamese, or potentially the player that our finalist here, the Mad Irish, beat to get to the upper bracket finals of No Greatness. There's a lot that could happen, and you best bet that the hunger for revenge has now spread to Vibrant Broccoli, because getting knocked down to that lower bracket has to hurt, and they
Oh
really
yeah.
don't want to end it here.
Yeah, for sure. But with that being said, I do believe that was the only match that we had queued on up ahead of us for today here on the side stream. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to us talk about chess. It was a lovely time. This was my first time ever being able to catch chess, and you know what? I thought it was really fun. We are gonna be seeing you guys back tomorrow. I'm not sure if you're back tomorrow with me, but
I'm
I know that
not.
I will be at 5 p.m. EST. Follow the socials, they're right here. And of course, everybody, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.